The harsh October wind cut through Amara Collins' thin jacket as her bloodied fingers pressed against the cracked keys of the old piano someone had abandoned outside Morrison's cafe. Each note that escaped the damaged instrument sounded hollow, broken, just like everything else in her life. The small cardboard sign propped against the piano's bench read in shaky handwriting, "Music for food, please help." "Look at this mess," laughed a woman in an expensive coat, pulling her friend closer. "Someone should call the police to move this person along." Amara's stomach cramped with hunger as she continued playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the melody she had learned when life still made sense. 2 days without food. 3 nights sleeping in the subway station bathroom. The cuts on her fingertips from the piano's broken keys had reopened, leaving small drops of blood on the yellowed ivory. A teenager with his friend stopped nearby, pulling out his phone. "Yo, check this out," he called loudly. "Homeless girl thinks she's Mozart or something." The group erupted in laughter as he started recording, making exaggerated faces at the camera. "Can I play for food?" one of them mocked in a high voice. "This is so cringe, dude." Amara's vision blurred, whether from tears or hunger she couldn't tell. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, "Music is prayer, baby girl. When you play you're talking to God." But God seemed very far away on this cold street corner where her dreams had shattered into 1,000 pieces. The beautiful African-American woman who had once graced concert halls and earned standing ovations at her college recitals now looked nothing like the promising musician she had been just 8 months ago. Her natural hair, once styled perfectly, now hung in a messy bun held together with a rubber band she had found. Her clothes, donated from a shelter, hung loose on her frame that had grown thin from irregular meals. More people gathered, some taking pictures, others making jokes. A few dropped coins into the small cup beside her, but most just stared like she was entertainment, a curiosity to laugh at during their lunch break. "Security should move her along," muttered a businessman into his phone. "This is bad for business." But Amara kept playing because music was all she had left. Her fingers found their way through Bach's Prelude in C major, then transitioned into a jazz piece her grandmother had taught her. Even on this broken piano, even with bleeding fingers, even with an empty stomach, the music still lived inside her. A little girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, she plays pretty." "Don't stare, honey," the mother replied, quickly pulling the child away. "It's rude." "Pretty." When was the last time anyone had called anything about her pretty? Amara's appearance had changed drastically since her world fell apart. The stress had taken its toll, but underneath the exhaustion and hunger, her natural beauty still shone through. Her dark brown eyes, though tired, still held the spark that had once captivated her music professors. Her smile, though rare now, could still light up a room when it appeared. The afternoon crowd grew larger as office workers headed back from lunch. Most walked by without a second glance, absorbed in their phones or conversations. Those who did notice either laughed, looked disgusted, or hurried past with uncomfortable expressions. "This is so sad," one woman whispered to her companion. "She's actually talented." "Talented people don't end up on the street," her friend replied dismissively. "She probably has a drug problem or something." If only they knew the truth. If only they understood that just 8 months ago she had been a music education major at Thornton University on a full scholarship, planning to become a teacher while pursuing her dream of composing. If only they knew about the nights she had spent caring for her sick grandmother, missing classes and assignments, watching the woman who raised her slowly fade away. Amara's fingers stumbled on a particularly difficult passage, the broken key sticking under her touch. A man in a business suit laughed loudly. "Even the piano is trying to escape that noise." The crowd around him chuckled, and Amara felt her cheeks burn with shame. She had performed in front of hundreds of people before, earning applause and praise. Now she couldn't even play a simple piece without becoming a joke. Her stomach cramped again, more violently this time. The dizzy spells were getting worse. She hadn't eaten since finding half a sandwich in a trash can yesterday morning. The shelter had been full for 3 nights running, and sleeping outside was becoming dangerous as the weather turned colder. What would her grandmother think if she could see her now? The woman who had sacrificed everything to pay for Amara's piano lessons, who had worked double shifts at the hospital cleaning crew to afford their small apartment, who had believed so completely in her granddaughter's talent. "You have a gift, baby," Grandmother Collins used to say. "Don't you ever let the world make you forget that." But the world had been cruel. After her grandmother's funeral, Amara had discovered the medical bills that had eaten through their small savings. The apartment they had shared for 15 years was lost when she couldn't make the rent. The funeral expenses had taken what little remained. Her scholarship was revoked when she missed too many classes during her grandmother's final weeks. Everything had crumbled so fast. The broken piano bench wobbled under her as she shifted, trying to find a comfortable position for her aching back. She had been playing for 4 hours straight, hoping to earn enough for a proper meal. The cup beside her held maybe $3 and change, not enough for anything substantial. A group of college students walked by, and Amara's heart clenched as she recognized the university sweatshirts. She had worn one just like that, had walked those same confident steps, had believed her future was secure. Now she was the cautionary tale they would tell their friends about why you needed backup plans. "Excuse me, miss?" A security guard's shadow fell across the piano keys. "I'm going to need you to move along. We've had complaints." Amara looked up at the man, whose expression held more sympathy than anger. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse from not using it much lately. "Just a little longer? I haven't eaten in 2 days." The guard glanced around at the dispersing crowd, then back at her bloody fingers on the keys. "Look, I'm sorry, but the cafe owner is threatening to call the police. There's a shelter about 6 blocks south. They serve dinner at 5. "The shelter's been full," Amara replied, carefully closing the piano lid. "But thank you for telling me kindly." As she packed her small bag with the few possessions she owned, Amara wondered how much longer she could survive like this. Winter was coming, and each day on the street was harder than the last. Her body was weak from hunger, her spirit broken from constant rejection and humiliation. The teenager who had been recording earlier shouted from across the street, "Hey piano girl, play something sad. You look like you know all about that." His friends erupted in laughter again, and Amara felt something inside her crack a little more. She picked up the cup with her earnings and walked away from the broken piano, leaving behind the place where she had just experienced one of the lowest moments of her life. Have you ever wondered what it really takes to survive when everything falls apart? How many of us are just one tragedy away from losing everything we've worked for? If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means the world to creators trying to share meaningful stories. 8 months earlier, life had been completely different for Amara Collins. She had woken up in her small but cozy bedroom in the apartment she shared with her grandmother, sunlight streaming through the curtains that Grandma Collins had sewn by hand. The walls were covered with certificates from piano competitions, photos from recitals, and acceptance letters from various music programs. "Morning, baby girl," her grandmother had called from the kitchen, the smell of pancakes filling the air. "You better hurry or you'll be late for Professor Williams' class." Amara had rushed through her morning routine, grabbing her music bag and kissing her grandmother's cheek before heading to Thornton University. At 22, she was in her final year of the music education program, maintaining a perfect GPA while working part-time at the campus music store. Life had been good. Challenging but good. The change began gradually. Her grandmother, who had always been the picture of health despite working long hours, started feeling tired more often. At first, they both assumed it was just age catching up with the 70-year-old woman who had raised Amara since she was 3 years old. "Just need to slow down a little," Grandma Collins would say, waving off Amara's concerns. "Been working since I was 14. Body's just reminding me I'm not 20 anymore." But the fatigue grew worse. Then came the chest pains, the shortness of breath, the dizzy spells. Amara had insisted on taking her to the doctor, expecting to hear about high blood pressure or maybe the need for vitamins. Instead, they received news that changed everything. Heart disease. Advanced. The doctors explained that years of working multiple jobs, stress, and delayed medical care due to lack of insurance had taken their toll. Surgery was needed, followed by extensive treatment and care. "How much will all this cost?" Grandma Collins had asked the cardiologist, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. The numbers the doctor quoted might as well have been in foreign currency. Even with the basic insurance plan from her grandmother's job, the medical expenses would be overwhelming. But there had been no choice. This was the woman who had given up her own dreams to raise Amara after her parents died in a car accident. Amara remembered making the decision to take a semester off from school to care for her grandmother and work extra hours to help with expenses. She had been so confident that it would just be temporary, that they would get through the crisis and everything would return to normal. The surgery had gone well initially. For a few weeks, it seemed like Grandma Collins was recovering beautifully. She had been able to come home, and Amara had felt optimistic about the future. But then complications set in. Infections, additional procedures, medications that cost hundreds of dollars each month. Amara had taken on a second job, waitressing at a diner near the hospital. Between work and caring for her grandmother, she barely slept. Her professors at the university had been understanding at first, allowing her to make up missed assignments and tests. But as weeks turned into months, her grades began to suffer. "You need to think about your future, Amara," Professor Martinez had told her during a meeting in his office. "Your grandmother would want you to finish your degree." "I can't abandon her," Amara had replied, exhaustion evident in her voice. "She's all I have. She gave up everything for me." The professor had nodded with sympathy, but the university's policies were clear. Too many absences, regardless of the reason, meant academic probation. And academic probation meant losing her scholarship. The spiral had accelerated from there. Without the scholarship, Amara couldn't afford tuition. Without being enrolled, she lost her campus job. The medical bills kept growing, eating through their small savings account that her grandmother had built over decades of careful budgeting. Amara had tried to find full-time work that paid enough to cover both their living expenses and the medical costs. But without a degree, her options were limited. The diner job didn't pay nearly enough, and evening shifts at a grocery store barely helped. Then her grandmother's condition had worsened again. More hospital stays, more procedures, more medications. The doctors had been hopeful, talking about experimental treatments and new approaches, but everything cost money they didn't have. Amara remembered the night her grandmother had called her to the bedside, taking her hand with fingers that had grown thin and frail. "Baby girl, I need you to promise me something," she had whispered. "Anything, Grandma. When I'm gone, you go back to school. You finish what you started. Don't let my sickness destroy your dreams." "Don't talk like that," Amara had protested, tears streaming down her face. "You're going to get better. We're going to figure this out." But her grandmother had known what Amara couldn't accept yet. 3 weeks later, she had passed away peacefully in her sleep, holding Amara's hand. The funeral had been small but beautiful. Members of their church, neighbors from their building, a few of Amara's friends from school. Everyone had such kind words about the woman who had worked tirelessly to give her granddaughter a better life. After the funeral, reality had hit hard. The final medical bills arrived, along with funeral expenses. Their small savings account was completely drained. The apartment they had called home for 15 years suddenly felt huge and empty and unaffordable. Amara had tried to negotiate with the landlord, explaining her situation and asking for time to find work and catch up on rent. Mr. Peterson had been sympathetic but firm. He had his own bills to pay and sentiment didn't cover mortgage payments. The eviction notice had given her 30 days. 30 days to figure out how to afford rent that required 2 full-time jobs, or find somewhere else to live. With no family left and no savings, options had been limited. She had tried staying with friends from school, but most lived in dorms or small apartments with roommates. After a few weeks of sleeping on couches and feeling like a burden, Amara had decided to try making it on her own. The first few nights in her car hadn't been too bad. She had parked in 24-hour shopping center lots, using gym memberships for showers and working temporary jobs during the day. But when her car had broken down and the repair costs exceeded what she could afford, everything had fallen apart completely. The broken piano outside Morrison's cafe had become her lifeline. Someone had abandoned it there weeks ago, and although it was damaged and out of tune, it still played. For Amara, it represented the only skill she had that might earn money without requiring an address, references, or a background check. The first time she had played for tips, she had been mortified. The thought of performing on the street, begging for money, had gone against everything her grandmother had taught her about dignity and self-respect. But hunger had a way of breaking down pride. Initially, people had been kinder. Some had stopped to listen, appreciating the beautiful music coming from such an unlikely source. But as days turned into weeks and Amara's appearance became more obviously that of someone homeless, the treatment had changed. Now, sitting in the subway station late at night, Amara tried to remember what hope felt like. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders and closed her eyes, trying to hear her grandmother's voice telling her that everything would be okay. But it was hard to believe in better days when each one brought new challenges, new humiliations, new reminders of how far she had fallen from the life she had once known. Tomorrow she would return to the piano and try again. Because what other choice did she have? The next morning brought rain, the kind of cold October drizzle that seemed to seep into every part of the city. Amara had spent the night in the subway station, dozing fitfully on a bench until security had moved her along around 3 a.m. Now, at 8 in the morning, she stood looking at the abandoned piano outside Morrison's cafe, wondering if anyone would stop to listen on such a miserable day. The piano bench was soaked and water had pooled on the keys. Amara used her jacket sleeve to dry off what she could, knowing that playing in these conditions would make the instrument sound even worse than usual. But she had no choice. The $3 from yesterday had bought her a small coffee and a day-old pastry, and now she was hungry again. She arranged her cardboard sign, the ink now smeared from the rain, and began to play. Her fingers were stiff from the cold, making the first few notes clumsy and uncertain. A few early commuters walked by, heads down, umbrellas up, focused only on getting to their destinations. After an hour, she had earned exactly 57 cents. The rain was picking up, and Amara was considering giving up for the morning when she heard footsteps slow down behind her. She didn't turn around immediately, having learned that acknowledging the audience sometimes made them uncomfortable and more likely to leave quickly. Instead, she continued playing a simplified version of Debussy's Clair de Lune, one of her grandmother's favorite pieces. The broken keys made some passages impossible, but she adapted the melody to work with what was available. "That's beautiful," a voice said softly. Amara's hands paused on the keys. The voice was male, warm, with a slight accent she couldn't place. Slowly she turned around. A man stood about 6 feet away, umbrella in hand but lowered, rain dotting his dark hair. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with kind brown eyes and an expression of genuine interest rather than the curiosity or pity she had grown accustomed to seeing. His clothes were nice but not flashy, jeans and a dark sweater under a wool coat. "Thank you," Amara replied quietly, unsure how to respond to what seemed like a sincere compliment. "Do you know any Rachmaninoff?" he asked, stepping a little closer. "Specifically the Piano Concerto No. 2? Amara's eyebrows rose slightly. Most people who stopped either requested popular songs or made jokes. This was the first time anyone had asked for classical music, especially something as complex as Rachmaninoff. "I know parts of it," she said carefully. "Though this piano." She gestured at the damaged instrument. "I understand the limitations," the man said with a small smile. "I'd love to hear whatever you're comfortable playing." There was something in his tone that made Amara believe he truly understood music, not just as background noise but as art. She turned back to the piano and began the opening theme of the second movement, the beautiful, melancholy melody that had always spoken to her soul. Despite the broken keys and out-of-tune strings, despite the rain and the cold, something magical happened. Amara lost herself in the music the way she hadn't been able to in months. She played with feeling, with the technical skill that years of training had given her, adapting the piece to work within the piano's limitations. When she finished, there was silence except for the sound of rain on concrete. "That was incredible," the man said, and his voice held a note of awe that surprised her. "You have extraordinary talent." Amara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you. That's very kind. I'm Jackson Rodriguez," he said, extending his hand. "And I'm not just being kind. I own a recording studio about 10 blocks from here. I know musical talent when I hear it." She shook his hand briefly. "Amara Collins." "Amara, can I ask you something?" Jackson paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "What circumstances led to you playing here?" The question was asked with such genuine concern, without judgment or condescension, that Amara found herself telling the truth instead of deflecting. "I lost my grandmother 8 months ago. Medical bills, lost my scholarship, lost our apartment. This is what I have left." Jackson nodded slowly, processing her words. "And before all this? I was studying music education at Thornton University. Senior year." The words hurt to say, reminding her of dreams that felt impossibly far away now. "Would you like to get some breakfast?" Jackson asked suddenly. "There's a diner around the corner that makes incredible pancakes. My treat." Amara's stomach clenched at the mention of pancakes, remembering her grandmother's weekend breakfasts. But she also felt the familiar wariness that had developed over the past months. "Why?" she asked bluntly. Jackson seemed to appreciate her directness. "Because you're talented, you're hungry, and I think there might be a way I can help. But first, let's get you out of this rain and into somewhere warm." Every instinct told Amara to be careful. Strangers didn't offer help without wanting something in return, especially to people in her situation. But Jackson's manner seemed genuine, and the thought of hot food and a warm place to sit was incredibly tempting. "I don't want charity," she said finally. "This isn't charity," Jackson replied. "This is one musician talking to another. And maybe if you're interested, this is a potential employer having breakfast with someone whose skills I'd like to learn more about." Employer. The word sent a flutter of hope through Amara's chest that she tried to suppress. Hope had become dangerous. It made the disappointments hurt worse. "What kind of work?" she asked. "Let's talk about it over food," Jackson said. I promise no strings attached. If you're not interested after breakfast, we shake hands and part ways. But right now you look like you could use a hot meal and I could use the company. Amara looked at the broken piano, at her cardboard sign, at the small cup with less than $1 in coins. Then she looked at Jackson, whose expression remained patient and kind. Okay, she said quietly. But I'm paying for my own meal. Jackson started to protest, then seemed to understand that her dignity was important to her. Fair enough. Though I should mention the pancakes are only $4 and they're definitely worth it. As they walked toward the diner, Amara found herself stealing glances at this unexpected stranger. Jackson Rodriguez moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in the world, but there was nothing arrogant about him. He held doors open naturally, matched his pace to hers, and made casual conversation about the neighborhood without prying into her situation further. The diner was warm and bright, filled with the comforting sounds of conversation and clinking dishes. The hostess greeted Jackson by name, leading them to a booth near the window. You come here often? Amara asked as they settled into the booth. Almost every morning, Jackson admitted. I'm terrible at cooking breakfast, and Rosa makes the best coffee in the city. As if summoned by her name, an older Latina woman approached their table with a warm smile. Jackson. Your usual? Please, Rosa. And whatever my friend here would like. Amara studied the menu, trying to find the most filling option for the least money. Just pancakes, please. And coffee. Honey, you want some eggs with that? Bacon? Rosa asked kindly. You look like you could use some protein. Before Amara could protest about the cost, Jackson spoke up. Rosa, put it all on my tab. Consider it a business expense. Jackson, I said. You said you'd pay for your meal, he interrupted gently. You didn't say anything about me not being able to buy breakfast for a potential business associate. Rosa looked between them with interest, then patted Amara's shoulder. Any friend of Jackson's is a friend of mine. I'll bring you enough food to last the day. As Rosa walked away, Amara felt overwhelmed by the kindness of these strangers. You really don't have to do this. I know I don't have to, Jackson said. I want to. And before you argue, let me tell you why. He leaned forward slightly, his expression becoming more serious. 3 years ago, I was sleeping in my car and playing guitar on street corners for gas money. A producer named Miguel Santos bought me dinner one night and offered me work at his studio. Changed my entire life. Amara stared at him, trying to reconcile this successful-looking man with the picture he had just painted. Really? Really? So when I hear talent like yours, especially when I can see that life has knocked you down, I remember what it felt like to be in that position. Miguel's kindness saved me. Maybe I can pass that forward. The sincerity in his voice made Amara's eyes water. She had grown so accustomed to judgment, to being seen as a problem to be avoided, that genuine compassion felt almost foreign. What kind of work are you talking about? She asked. Jackson smiled. Let's eat first. Then I'll show you the studio and we can talk possibilities. But I'll tell you this much. I could use someone with your musical knowledge to help with arrangements and maybe some session work. If you're interested. For the first time in months, Amara felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe her life could start moving in a positive direction again. Rosa's breakfast arrived like a feast, the plates covering most of the small table. Fluffy pancakes stacked high with butter melting down the sides, scrambled eggs that looked like clouds, crispy bacon, and hash browns that made Amara's mouth water just looking at them. The coffee was rich and hot, warming her hands as she wrapped them around the mug. Rosa doesn't believe in small portions, Jackson said with a laugh as the older woman winked and walked away. Amara took her first bite and couldn't suppress a small sound of pleasure. Real food, hot and delicious after so many days of hunger. She had to force herself to eat slowly, knowing that her stomach might not handle too much food too quickly after going without. Tell me about your studio, she said between bites, curious about this man who seemed too good to be true. Jackson's face lit up as he talked about his work. Rodriguez Productions started small, just me and a couple of pieces of equipment in a rented space. But we've grown over the past 3 years. We do everything from recording albums for independent artists to creating jingles for local businesses. Some film scoring work too. That sounds amazing, Amara said, genuinely impressed. How did you learn the production side? Trial and error mostly. Miguel, the producer I mentioned, taught me the basics. Then I spent every free minute watching YouTube tutorials and experimenting. Music has always been my passion, but I discovered I love the technical side too. Taking raw talent and helping shape it into something special. As Jackson spoke about his business, Amara could see the genuine enthusiasm in his eyes. This wasn't someone trying to impress her or make himself sound important. He truly loved what he did. "What would you want me to do?" she asked carefully. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure yet," Jackson admitted. "That's why I'd like you to see the studio first. But here's what I know. You have incredible technical skill and musical understanding. I could use help with arrangements, maybe some piano tracks for artists who can't afford to hire session musicians. And..." He paused, seeming to consider his words. And I think you might have original compositions in you. The way you adapted that Rachmaninoff to work on a broken piano showed creativity and musical intelligence that goes beyond just playing what's written on a page." Amara felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "I used to write music. Before everything fell apart. I'd love to hear some of your original work sometime." The conversation flowed easily as they finished breakfast. Jackson asked about her musical background, her training, her favorite composers. It felt wonderful to talk about music as art again, rather than just as a way to earn enough money for food. When Rosa brought the check, Jackson paid without making a show of it, adding a generous tip that made the older woman smile broadly. "Ready to see the studio?" he asked as they prepared to leave. Amara nodded, though nervousness was starting to mix with her excitement. This all seemed too good to be true, and experience had taught her to be cautious about situations that seemed perfect. The walk to the studio took them through a neighborhood that was clearly being revitalized. Old brick buildings were being converted into lofts and creative spaces, with art galleries and coffee shops mixed in among auto repair shops and laundromats. "This area is changing fast," Jackson explained as they walked. "Lots of artists and musicians moving in because the rent is still reasonable. The building I'm in used to be a textile factory. Rodriguez Productions occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse." As Jackson led her up the stairs, Amara could hear the faint sound of music coming from behind closed doors. "That's Studio B," Jackson said, noticing her listening. "Local band working on their first album." He unlocked a door marked Rodriguez Productions, and led her into a reception area that was simple but welcoming. Comfortable chairs, music industry magazines on a coffee table, and walls covered with framed photos of recording sessions and album covers. "Melanie, this is Amara Collins," Jackson said to a young woman behind the reception desk. "Amara, meet Melanie, who basically runs this place and keeps me organized." Melanie looked up from her computer with a friendly smile. "Nice to meet you, Amara. Jackson's told me so much about your piano playing." Amara shot Jackson a questioning look. When had he had time to talk about her? "I called ahead while you were finishing breakfast," he explained. "Wanted to make sure the main studio was free." He led her through a hallway lined with gold and platinum records, pointing out work the studio had been involved with. Some were artists Amara recognized, others were unfamiliar, but all represented successful collaborations. The main studio took Amara's breath away. A beautiful grand piano sat in the center of the room, surrounded by professional recording equipment that looked like something from a music magazine. Soundproofed walls, multiple microphones, and a control booth with more buttons and screens than she could count. "Go ahead," Jackson said softly, gesturing toward the piano. "Try it out." Amara approached the instrument reverently. It was a Steinway, probably worth more than she had made in her entire life. The bench was perfectly positioned, the keys pristine and responsive under her touch. She played a few scales, marveling at the piano's tone and responsiveness. After months on the broken street piano, this felt like driving a Ferrari after walking everywhere. "Play something," Jackson encouraged from where he stood near the control booth. Amara thought for a moment, then began playing one of her own compositions, a piece she had written for her grandmother during her final weeks. It was melancholy but beautiful, full of love and loss and hope all woven together. As she played, she forgot about everything else. The music flowed through her, and for the first time in months she felt completely herself again. This was who she had always been underneath the struggle and hardship. When the last note faded, there was silence in the studio. "That was original?" Jackson asked, his voice filled with awe. Amara nodded, suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. "Amara, that was extraordinary. The emotion, the technical complexity, the way you built tension and resolved it." He shook his head. "That's exactly the kind of musical intelligence I need in this studio." "What are you offering exactly?" she asked, still not quite believing this was real. Jackson sat down on a nearby stool, his expression becoming businesslike but still warm. "I'd like to offer you a position as a studio assistant and session musician. You'd help with arrangements, play piano tracks when needed, and assist with various projects." The pay would be $15 an hour to start, with opportunities for bonuses based on projects. $15 an hour. Amara tried to calculate what that would mean, how many hours she would need to work to afford basic living expenses. How many hours per week, she asked. Initially, probably 20 to 30 hours depending on what projects we have going. But there's potential for growth. And Amara? Jackson paused, meeting her eyes directly. This isn't charity. I genuinely need help, and you have skills that would be valuable to this business. Amara felt tears threatening and blinked them back. I'd need to find somewhere to live. I might be able to help with that too, Jackson said carefully. There's a small apartment above the studio that we've been using for storage. It's not fancy, but it has a bathroom and a kitchenette. If you're interested, you could use it temporarily while you get back on your feet. This was definitely too good to be true. People didn't just solve all your problems in one conversation, especially not strangers who had met you playing piano on the street. Why are you doing this? Amara asked bluntly. Really? What do you get out of helping me? Jackson considered the question seriously. Honestly? I get a talented musician who can help my business grow. I get someone who understands music the way I do. And, he paused, looking slightly embarrassed. I get to pay forward the kindness that Miguel showed me. It feels good to help when you can. Amara studied his face, looking for signs of deception or hidden motives. But Jackson's expression remained open and sincere. Can I see the apartment? She asked. Of course. The apartment was small but clean, with a single room that served as bedroom and living area, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom with a shower. After months of sleeping in subway stations in her car, it looked like luxury. The rent would be minimal, Jackson said. Basically just utilities. Consider it part of your compensation package. Amara turned to face him, this stranger who was offering to change her life completely. Jackson, if I say yes, I need you to understand something. I won't let you down. I'll work harder than any employee you've ever had. But I also won't be your charity case. This has to be a real business arrangement. I wouldn't want it any other way, Jackson replied seriously. So what do you say? Amara took a deep breath, thinking of her grandmother's voice encouraging her to take chances, to believe in herself and in the kindness of others. I say yes, she said, extending her hand. When do I start? Jackson shook her hand with a grin. How about tomorrow morning? 9 o'clock. For the first time in 8 months, Amara Collins went to sleep that night with hope for tomorrow. In a real bed, in a real home, with the promise of real work, doing what she loved most. Sometimes, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, guardian angels come in the most unexpected forms. Amara's first day at Rodriguez Productions began at 8:30 in the morning, 30 minutes before she was supposed to start. She had woken up in the small apartment, temporarily forgetting where she was, then remembering with a rush of gratitude that felt almost overwhelming. After a quick shower in her own bathroom, she had dressed in the best clothes she owned and made her way downstairs to the studio. Melanie was already at her desk with a cup of coffee and a warm smile. Jackson's in Studio A with the morning session, she said. He asked me to show you around and get you oriented. The tour was more detailed than the day before, including the smaller Studio B, the equipment storage room, and the break room with its coffee maker that Melanie declared essential for survival. She explained the studio's daily routine, the filing system for client information, and the basics of the scheduling software. Most of our clients are pretty easy to work with, Melanie explained as they walked through the facilities. We get some big egos occasionally, but Jackson's good at managing personalities. He believes in creating a comfortable environment where artists can do their best work. Around 10 o'clock, Jackson appeared in the reception area with a man Amara recognized as the lead singer of a band that had been getting radio play lately. Thanks for everything, Jackson, the singer was saying. Those piano arrangements really made the difference. The song feels complete now. After the client left, Jackson turned to Amara with an apologetic expression. Sorry I wasn't here when you arrived. Carlos needed some last-minute additions to a track they're releasing next week. Melanie's been showing me everything, Amara assured him. This place is incredible. Ready to jump in? Jackson asked. I have a project that could really use your input. He led her to Studio A, where the previous session's equipment was still set up. Sheet music covered the piano, and several guitars stood on stands around the room. Local folk duo called River and Stone, Jackson explained. Great harmonies, solid songwriting, but they're struggling with the instrumental arrangements. They have piano written into most of their songs, but neither of them plays well enough to record the parts they've composed. Amara looked at the sheet music spread across the piano. The compositions were good, with interesting chord progressions and melodies that had real emotional depth. But the piano parts were basic, almost elementary. These arrangements could be much stronger, she said, studying the notation. That's exactly what I was thinking, Jackson replied. Would you mind taking a look at their lead single? See if you can develop the piano part without changing the basic structure they want. Amara sat at the Steinway and played through the song as written. It was pleasant but forgettable, the kind of piano accompaniment that added little to the overall composition. Can I try some variations? She asked. Please do. What happened next surprised both of them. Amara began experimenting with the chord progressions, adding subtle complexities that enhanced the song's emotional impact without overshadowing the vocals. She created a bridge section that wasn't in the original, a piano interlude that built tension and then resolved it beautifully. Jackson watched from the control booth, occasionally making adjustments to the recording levels as Amara worked. After an hour, she had transformed a simple folk song into something that sounded radio-ready. Play that last version again, Jackson called through the intercom. As Amara played, Jackson recorded her performance, capturing not just the notes but the feeling she brought to the music. When she finished, he came back into the studio with an expression of amazement. Amara, that's not just an arrangement. That's a complete musical reimagining. You took their song and made it 3 times better while keeping everything they loved about it. Is that okay? She asked, suddenly worried she had overstepped. It's more than okay. It's exactly what this studio needs. Jackson sat down beside her on the piano bench. River and Stone is coming in tomorrow to record final vocals. Would you be willing to play piano for their session? You mean like professional recording? Amara's voice held a note of excitement mixed with nervousness. Professional recording, professional pay, professional credit? This is going to be their debut single, and your arrangement is going to help make it special. The rest of the morning was spent learning the studio's recording procedures and practicing the songs River and Stone would be recording. Jackson proved to be an excellent teacher, explaining not just what to do but why each step mattered in creating quality recordings. During lunch break, Melanie joined them in the break room with sandwiches from a nearby deli. So what's your story? She asked Amara in the direct but friendly way that seemed to be her nature. Jackson mentioned you're incredibly talented, but he was vague about details. Amara gave a shortened version of recent events, focusing on her musical background rather than the difficult circumstances that had led her to Rodriguez Productions. Music education major at Thornton, Melanie mused. I almost went there for audio engineering. What made you choose education over performance? I wanted to teach kids to love music the way my grandmother taught me, Amara said. She always said that sharing knowledge was the best way to honor a gift. That's beautiful, Jackson said. And you still could, teach. There's no reason this job has to be permanent if you want to finish your degree eventually. The possibility of returning to school seemed so distant that Amara hadn't allowed herself to think about it. But hearing Jackson mention it casually as if it were achievable, made something stir in her chest. The afternoon brought a new project. A local business wanted a jingle for their radio advertisements. Jackson played them the rough demo the client had provided, a generic melody with forgettable lyrics. Think you can make this more memorable? He asked Amara. Working together, they transformed the simple jingle into something catchy and professional. Amara's piano work provided a foundation that was both sophisticated and accessible, while Jackson added guitar and drum tracks that gave the whole piece energy and polish. I have an idea, Amara said as they listened to the playback. What if we did a variation for different times of day? Same basic melody but with different moods, morning version, afternoon, evening? Jackson's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. Clients love options, and it shows we're thinking beyond just fulfilling the basic requirements. They spent another hour creating 3 versions of the jingle, each with distinct personality while maintaining brand consistency. When they finished, Jackson looked at Amara with something approaching awe. You realize what just happened, right? He said. You just took a routine project and turned it into something that's going to impress the hell out of our client. They're going to tell other businesses about us. It was your idea to collaborate, Amara protested. The creative vision was all you. I just helped with the technical execution. As the day wound down, Jackson showed Amara how to close down the studio systems and secure the equipment for the night. How did today feel? He asked as they prepared to leave. Like coming back to life, Amara answered honestly. I'd forgotten what it felt like to create music instead of just playing it. Tomorrow's going to be even better, Jackson promised. River and Stone are great people, and they're going to be thrilled with what you've done to their songs. Walking up the stairs to her apartment that evening, Amara reflected on how completely her life had changed in less than 24 hours. Yesterday morning she had been homeless and hungry, playing a broken piano for spare change. Tonight, she was a professional studio musician with her own apartment and meaningful work to do tomorrow. But it was more than just the practical changes. For the first time since her grandmother's death, she felt like herself again. Not the desperate person who had been just trying to survive, but Amara Collins, the musician and composer who had dreams worth pursuing. As she made dinner in her tiny kitchen, she found herself humming the melodies they had worked on during the day. Music was flowing through her again, ideas and possibilities that had been dormant during the darkest months. Maybe Jackson was right. Maybe she could finish her degree eventually. Maybe she could teach music to kids who needed it the way she had needed it growing up. Maybe all the dreams she had thought were lost forever were just waiting for the right moment to resurface. For now, though, it was enough to have work she loved, a safe place to sleep, and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new opportunities to create something beautiful. What would you do if someone offered to change your entire life with a single opportunity? Would you have the courage to accept help when you needed it most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about second chances and the power of human kindness. 3 weeks into her new life at Rodriguez Productions, Amara had found a rhythm that felt both challenging and comfortable. Her days were filled with a variety of projects, from recording piano tracks for local artists to helping Jackson arrange music for small film scores. Each day brought something different, and she was learning more about the music industry than she had ever imagined. The River and Stone recording session had been a huge success. The folk duo had been amazed by Amara's arrangements, and their single was already getting attention from local radio stations. Word was spreading about the studio's improved arrangements and piano work, bringing in new clients who specifically requested Amara's involvement. "You're becoming quite the reputation around here," Melanie said one morning as she updated the booking calendar. 3 clients this week asked specifically for that amazing piano player Jackson found. Amara felt a flush of pride mixed with disbelief. After months of being invisible, ignored, or mocked, being sought after for her musical abilities felt surreal. Jackson appeared in the reception area with his usual morning coffee and a stack of mail. "Speaking of reputations," he said, handing Amara an envelope. "This came for you yesterday." The return address made Amara's heart skip. Thornton University, Office of Student Financial Aid. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope and read the letter inside. "What is it?" Jackson asked, noticing her expression. "They're asking if I want to reapply for financial aid for the spring semester," Amara said slowly. "There's been some kind of policy change about medical hardship cases." Jackson's face broke into a smile. "That's incredible news." "I don't know," Amara said, setting the letter aside. "It's been almost a year since I was in school. I'd have to catch up on so much, and I'd need to maintain certain grades to keep any aid they offered." "But it's possible," Jackson pointed out. "You could finish your degree." The possibility was tempting but also overwhelming. Amara had built a new life at the studio, and the thought of disrupting it felt scary. Plus, there was another complication she hadn't mentioned to anyone yet. Over the past 3 weeks, her feelings toward Jackson had begun to evolve beyond professional gratitude. He was kind, talented, passionate about music, and treated her as an equal partner in their creative work. She found herself looking forward to their conversations about music, enjoying the way his eyes lit up when they discovered a particularly beautiful chord progression together. But Jackson was her employer, her rescuer, the person who had saved her from homelessness. The power dynamics made any romantic feeling seem inappropriate, even if she sometimes caught him looking at her with an expression that suggested his feelings might be evolving too. "Let's focus on today's projects," she said, folding the letter and putting it in her pocket. "What do we have scheduled?" "Actually," Jackson said, his tone becoming slightly nervous, "I have something a little different planned. A friend of mine runs a small music venue downtown, and they're having an open mic night tonight. I was wondering if you'd like to go." "As work?" Amara asked. I don't know. Fun. Research? A chance to hear some local talent?" Jackson seemed uncharacteristically flustered. "I thought you might enjoy it." This felt distinctly like being asked on a date, though neither of them was acknowledging it directly. "I'd like that," Amara said. "What kind of venue?" "Intimate space, maybe 50 seats. They get a good mix of singer-songwriters, jazz musicians, poets. Very supportive audience." The day passed quickly with their usual work, but Amara found herself thinking about the evening ahead. She hadn't been to a live music venue since before her grandmother's illness, and the prospect of experiencing music as an audience member rather than performer felt both exciting and strange. At 6 o'clock, they closed the studio and Jackson drove them to the venue in his well-maintained Honda Civic. The car was clean but lived in, with a collection of CDs in the center console and sheet music scattered in the back seat. "Do you ever perform your own music?" Amara asked as they drove through downtown traffic. "Occasionally," Jackson said. "I write songs, but I'm better at producing other people's work than performing my own. What about you? Do you ever play your original compositions for audiences?" "I used to in college. There were recitals where students could perform original work." Amara looked out the window at the city lights beginning to flicker on. "I miss that. Playing music that came from inside me rather than just interpreting what other people wrote. Maybe tonight you'll be inspired to start performing again." The venue, called the Blue Note, was exactly as Jackson had described. Small, intimate, with mismatched chairs arranged around tiny tables and a small stage area that put performers close to their audience. The crowd was young and diverse, with the relaxed, supportive energy of people who genuinely loved music. Jackson's friend Miguel Santos turned out to be the same producer who had helped Jackson get started in the business. Miguel was a warm, energetic man in his 40s who greeted them both with genuine enthusiasm. "So this is the piano genius Jackson's been telling me about," Miguel said, shaking Amara's hand. "He says you're revolutionizing his studio arrangements." "Jackson's being generous," Amara replied, but she felt pleased by the compliment. "In this business, generous is the last thing Jackson is about talent," Miguel laughed. "If he says you're exceptional, then you're exceptional." They found a table near the back and ordered drinks while the first few performers took the stage. The quality varied, but every performer received supportive applause and encouragement from the audience. "This is wonderful," Amara said during a break between acts. "Everyone's so positive." "That's what makes this place special," Jackson agreed. "It's about supporting artists and building community, not just showcasing perfect performances." As the evening progressed, Amara found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months. The music, the company, the simple pleasure of being in a space dedicated to creativity and expression reminded her of why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. "Ladies and gentlemen," Miguel announced from the small stage, "we have a special guest tonight. Someone who's been making waves in our local recording scene. Jackson Rodriguez, would you like to share one of your new songs?" Jackson looked surprised but not entirely unprepared. "I didn't know Miguel was going to do that," he said to Amara, but he was already standing up. "You planned this?" Amara accused with a smile. "Maybe a little," Jackson admitted. "Want to come up with me? I could use a piano player." The invitation was spontaneous, but something in Jackson's expression made it feel important. "I don't know the song," Amara protested. "It's simple. Key of G, basic progression. I'll nod when the chord changes are coming." Before she could overthink it, Amara found herself following Jackson to the small stage. There was an old upright piano that had seen better days but was properly tuned, and Jackson had his guitar from the car. "This is a song I wrote recently," Jackson said to the audience. "About second chances and the people who help us find our way back to who we're supposed to be." He began playing a gentle, finger-picked melody on his guitar, and Amara instinctively found the complementary chords on the piano. The song was beautiful, with lyrics about lost dreams and unexpected kindness, about finding hope when everything seemed impossible. As they played together, something magical happened. Their musical styles blended seamlessly, each anticipating the other's moves, building on each other's ideas. When Jackson sang the chorus about guardian angels in ordinary clothes, he looked directly at Amara and she felt her heart skip. The audience was completely silent, absorbed in the music and the obvious connection between the two performers. When the song ended, the applause was warm and sustained. "That was beautiful," Miguel said as they returned to their table. "You two have real chemistry as musical partners." Chemistry. The word hung in the air between them as they drove back to the studio later that evening. "Thank you for tonight," Amara said as Jackson walked her to the stairs leading to her apartment. "I'd forgotten how much I love just listening to music, being part of a musical community." "Thank you for playing with me," Jackson replied. "That was special." They stood in the small hallway, neither quite ready to say goodnight. The evening had shifted something between them, moved their relationship from employer-employee toward something more complex and potentially wonderful. "Jackson," Amara began, then stopped, unsure how to voice what she was thinking. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too. But I also know this situation is complicated. I don't want you to ever feel like your job depends on anything other than your talent and hard work. What if I told you that's not what I'm worried about? Jackson stepped slightly closer. What are you worried about? I'm worried that I'm reading this all wrong. That you're just being kind and I'm mistaking kindness for something else because I haven't had much of either lately. You're not reading it wrong, Jackson said quietly. But you're right that it's complicated. Your life has changed so much in the past few weeks. I don't want to add pressure or confusion to that. Amara appreciated his consideration, but she also knew her own heart. The feelings developing between them were real, built on shared passion for music, mutual respect and genuine caring. Can I tell you something? She said. Playing music with you tonight, creating something beautiful together, felt like the most natural thing in the world. Like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, who I'm supposed to be doing it with. Jackson's smile was soft and genuine. I felt that too. So maybe we don't have to figure everything out tonight, Amara suggested. Maybe we just see where this goes step by step. Step by step, Jackson agreed. Starting with breakfast tomorrow? As friends and creative partners? As friends and creative partners, Amara confirmed. With possibilities. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Amara realized that for the first time since her grandmother's death, she was excited about the future. Not just surviving day to day but actually looking forward to what might come next. The letter from Thornton University was still in her pocket, but now it felt like one option among many rather than a desperate lifeline. She had choices again, dreams that might actually be achievable. And maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who wanted to build those dreams alongside her. 2 months had passed since that evening at the Blue Note, and the dynamic at Rodriguez Productions had settled into something comfortable and productive. Amara and Jackson had developed an easy partnership that blended professional collaboration with growing personal connection. They had coffee together most mornings, worked seamlessly on musical arrangements, and spent many evenings exploring the city's music scene together. Their relationship remained officially undefined, but the chemistry was undeniable. Small touches when reaching for the same piece of equipment, lingering looks during recording sessions, conversations that stretched late into the evening as they discovered more shared interests and dreams. Amara had decided to defer reapplying to Thornton for another semester, wanting to build more financial stability and explore what opportunities might develop at the studio. The decision felt right. She was learning more about the music industry in a few months than she might have in years of classroom study. We need to talk about expanding, Jackson said one morning as they reviewed the booking calendar. 3 months ago, the studio had maybe 15 hours of sessions per week. Now they were consistently booked 40 hours or more, often turning away potential clients. What kind of expanding? Amara asked, though she suspected she knew the direction of his thoughts. More equipment, maybe another small recording space. And definitely another full-time employee. Jackson looked at her meaningfully. Someone with arrangement skills and client management abilities. Are you offering me a promotion? I'm offering you a partnership, Jackson said seriously. Not ownership, not yet, but real input into business decisions and a salary that reflects how much you've contributed to our growth. Before Amara could respond, Melanie's voice came through the intercom. Jackson, there's a call for you on line 2. Says she's from Atlantic Records. Jackson and Amara exchanged surprised glances. Atlantic Records was a major label, far above the level of clients they typically worked with. I'll take it in the office, Jackson said, then paused. Actually, will you take it with me? I have a feeling this might involve your work. The call was from Sarah Chin, an A&R representative for Atlantic Records who had heard River and Stone's single on a Spotify playlist curated by indie music bloggers. The arrangement work on that track is exceptional, Sarah explained over the speakerphone. Sophisticated but accessible, exactly what we look for in crossover potential. We're interested in talking to whoever did the piano work. Jackson looked at Amara and nodded encouragingly. That would be Amara Collins, our lead arranger and studio pianist. Miss Collins, I'd like to discuss a project with you. We have an artist, Zoe Williams, who's struggling with the arrangements for her debut album. She's incredibly talented, but the songs need more sophisticated instrumental backing. Would you be interested in coming to our Los Angeles office to discuss collaboration? Amara felt her heart skip. Los Angeles. Atlantic Records. This was the kind of opportunity she had dreamed about when she was studying music, the type of break that could change everything. That's a very generous offer, she managed to say. Can I ask for some details about the project? Sarah outlined the opportunity, A 2-week residency in LA working with Zoe Williams and Atlantic's production team. The pay would be substantial, enough to cover all expenses plus a significant fee. If the collaboration went well, there could be ongoing work with other Atlantic artists. When would this happen? Jackson asked. We'd like to have Miss Collins here within the next 3 weeks if possible. The album has a release timeline we need to meet. After they scheduled a follow-up call for the next day, Jackson and Amara sat in silence for a moment, processing what had just happened. This is incredible, Jackson finally said. This is exactly the kind of opportunity that establishes careers. It is, Amara agreed, though her emotions were more complicated than pure excitement. But it means leaving Rodriguez Productions for 2 weeks, maybe longer if it leads to more work. Amara, you have to do this, Jackson said firmly. This is Atlantic Records. Do you understand how many musicians would give anything for this chance? What about the studio? What about our projects? The studio will be here when you get back. Our projects will be here. But opportunities like this don't come along often. That evening they went to their usual diner to discuss the details over dinner. Rosa greeted them warmly as she had become accustomed to doing over the past months. You two look serious tonight, she observed as she poured their coffee. Everything okay? Amara just got an incredible job offer, Jackson told her. Major record label in Los Angeles. Rosa's face lit up. That's wonderful. You're going to be famous, Mija? It's just a 2-week project, Amara protested, but she felt a flutter of excitement at the possibility Rosa was suggesting. As they discussed the practical details, Amara found herself watching Jackson's face carefully. He seemed genuinely excited for her, but there was something else in his expression that looked like concern, maybe even sadness. What aren't you telling me? She asked finally. Jackson was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. I'm thrilled for you. Really. This is exactly what should happen with talent like yours. But I'm also scared, he admitted. Scared that you'll go to LA and realize how much bigger the music world is than our little studio. Scared that this will be the beginning of something that takes you far away from here. His honesty touched her deeply. Jackson, everything good in my life right now started with you believing in me. Do you really think I'd forget that? I think you should follow opportunities wherever they lead, Jackson said. Even if it means leaving. I want what's best for your career, even if it's not what's best for me personally. The conversation continued as they walked back to the studio, exploring the possibilities and implications of the Atlantic offer. By the time they reached the building, they had decided that Amara should accept the opportunity but negotiate for the flexibility to return to Rodriguez Productions afterward. There's something else we should probably discuss, Jackson said as they stood in the hallway outside her apartment. What's that? What this means for us, he said quietly. For whatever this is between us. Amara had been thinking the same thing. Their relationship had been developing slowly, built on shared work and friendship, but it was undeniably moving toward something romantic. The LA opportunity introduced uncertainty into that progression. I don't want to make assumptions, she said carefully. But I also don't want to pretend there's nothing between us. There's definitely something between us, Jackson agreed. The question is whether it's strong enough to survive some distance and uncertainty. Only one way to find out, Amara said, stepping closer to him. Jackson, I care about you. More than just as a business partner or friend. This opportunity doesn't change that. I care about you too, he said softly. More than I probably should, given the circumstances. They stood close together in the dim hallway, the weight of unspoken feelings and uncertain futures hanging between them. Finally, Jackson reached up and gently touched her face. Can I kiss you? He asked. I was hoping you would, Amara replied. The kiss was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as they both relaxed into the moment. When they separated, both were smiling. That was worth waiting for, Jackson said. Definitely, Amara agreed. And Jackson? Whatever happens in LA, this is real. We're real. Promise me something, Jackson said. Promise you'll take every opportunity that comes your way, even if it means changes for us. Your talent deserves every chance to flourish. I promise, Amara said, if you promise something too. What's that? Promise you'll still be here when I come back. Not just the studio but you. Us. I promise, Jackson said, sealing it with another kiss. 3 days later, Amara was on a plane to Los Angeles, carrying a small suitcase and a heart full of nervous excitement. The past months had already transformed her life beyond recognition, but she had a feeling the real adventure was just beginning. As the plane lifted off, she thought about Jackson's words about guardian angels in ordinary clothes. She had found hers in the form of a kind stranger who stopped to listen to broken piano music on a rainy street. Now it was time to see what she could build with the second chance he had given her. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in over a year, uncertainty felt like possibility rather than fear. Los Angeles was overwhelming and exhilarating in equal measure. The Atlantic Records building in Hollywood was everything Amara had imagined a major label headquarters would be. Sleek, modern, filled with energy and the constant hum of creative activity. Gold and platinum records lined the walls, and everywhere she looked, she saw evidence of the musical careers that had been launched from these offices. Sarah Chen met her in the lobby on her first day, a polished woman in her 30s who moved with the confident efficiency of someone comfortable in the music industry's fast pace. "We're so excited to have you here," Sarah said as she led Amara through the building. "Zoe's been struggling with these arrangements for months. Her previous collaborators couldn't find the right balance between her artistic vision and commercial accessibility." The studio where Amara would be working was state-of-the-art, with equipment that made even Jackson's impressive setup look modest by comparison. At the center of the room sat a concert grand piano that probably cost more than most people's houses. "Zoe should be here in about an hour," Sarah explained. "In the meantime, let me play you some of her rough demos so you can get a feel for her style." As the music played through the studio's high-end speakers, Amara was immediately impressed. Zoe Williams had a voice that was both powerful and vulnerable, with a songwriter's instinct for melody and emotional truth. The songs were good, but Sarah was right about the arrangements. They felt unfinished, lacking the instrumental sophistication that would make them ready for major label release. "She writes everything on guitar," Sarah continued. "Simple chord progressions, basic strumming patterns. She knows the songs need more, but every attempt to add instrumentation has felt either too busy or too generic." Amara could already hear possibilities in her head: piano lines that would complement rather than compete with Zoe's guitar, string arrangements that would add emotional depth, rhythmic elements that would give the songs more drive without overwhelming their intimate feel. When Zoe arrived, she was nothing like Amara had expected. Instead of the polished pop star image Amara had imagined, Zoe was a young woman about her own age with natural blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a vintage band t-shirt. Her manner was friendly but slightly guarded, the wariness of someone who had been disappointed by collaborators before. "So you're the arrangement genius Sarah's been telling me about," Zoe said, shaking Amara's hand. "I listened to that River and Stone track. Really beautiful work." "Thank you," Amara replied. "I've been listening to your demos. Your songwriting is incredible. These songs just need the right instrumental support to let them shine." They spent the first day just talking through the songs, with Zoe playing them on her acoustic guitar while Amara made notes about possible approaches. There was no pressure to produce anything, just two musicians getting to know each other's styles and finding common ground. "The thing is," Zoe explained as they worked through her song Midnight Drive, "I don't want the arrangements to make the songs feel overproduced. These came from real experiences, real emotions. I need the music to honor that authenticity." "Absolutely," Amara agreed. "The best arrangements don't announce themselves. They create a foundation that makes the song feel more like itself, not different from itself." By the second day they had found their rhythm. Amara would listen to Zoe play a song, then experiment with piano parts that enhanced the emotional content. Sometimes she would suggest subtle changes to chord progressions or melodic lines, always checking with Zoe to make sure the modifications felt true to the original vision. "This is exactly what I was hoping for," Zoe said after Amara had played through a piano arrangement for Broken Windows, a song about growing up in a small town with big dreams. "It feels like what I was hearing in my head but couldn't figure out how to play." The work was challenging but deeply satisfying. Amara was using every skill she had developed over years of musical training, but also discovering new capabilities she hadn't known she possessed. The pressure of working with a major label brought out a level of creativity and precision that surprised even her. Each evening, Amara called Jackson to update him on the project and hear about life at Rodriguez Productions. The studio was staying busy with their usual clients, and Jackson had hired a temporary assistant to help with the increased workload. "How's LA treating you?" Jackson asked during one of their calls. "It's incredible," Amara said honestly. "The resources here, the level of professionalism, the opportunities. But it's also intimidating. Everyone moves so fast and there's so much pressure to be perfect." "You are perfect," Jackson said, making her smile. "At least musically speaking." "I miss you," she said softly. I miss you too. But I'm also proud of you. Sarah Chin called yesterday to tell us how impressed everyone is with your work. She called you? Apparently Atlantic wanted references about your character and work ethic. I may have gushed a little about how talented and professional you are. By the end of the first week, Amara and Zoe had completed arrangements for 6 songs, with 4 more to go. The collaboration was going so well that Sarah had started hinting about additional projects, other Atlantic artists who could benefit from Amara's arrangement skills. Would you be interested in relocating to LA? Sarah asked during a lunch meeting. We could offer you a position as a staff arranger. Steady work, excellent pay, the chance to work with some of the biggest names in music. The offer was tempting in ways Amara hadn't expected. Los Angeles offered career opportunities she couldn't find anywhere else, the chance to work at the highest levels of the music industry. But it would also mean leaving behind everything she had built in the past few months. Her work at Rodriguez Productions, her partnership with Jackson, the life they had been creating together. Can I think about it? Amara asked. Of course. But don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't wait forever. That evening, Amara walked along Santa Monica Beach, trying to process the decision she was facing. Her phone rang as she watched the sunset paint the Pacific Ocean in shades of orange and pink. Hey, Jackson's voice was warm and familiar. How was your day? Complicated, Amara said and told him about Sarah's offer. Jackson was quiet for a long moment after she finished. That's an incredible opportunity, he said finally. It is, Amara agreed. But it would mean staying in LA indefinitely. It would mean leaving Rodriguez Productions, leaving you. Amara, you have to consider this seriously, Jackson said, though she could hear the strain in his voice. This is the kind of career break most musicians dream about their entire lives. What if I don't want to choose between my career and my personal life? She asked. What if I want both? Then we figure out how to make both work, Jackson said. Look, I know long-distance relationships are complicated, but if anyone can make it work, it's us. And maybe there are ways for me to be involved in what you're doing there. What do you mean? I mean, maybe Rodriguez Productions could expand to have a West Coast presence. Maybe we could find ways to collaborate across the distance. I don't know exactly what it would look like, but I'm willing to explore possibilities. His words reminded Amara why she had fallen for him in the first place. Instead of trying to hold her back or make her choose, he was looking for ways to support her dreams while building something together. I love you, she said suddenly, the words coming out before she had consciously decided to say them. I love you too, Jackson replied without hesitation. Which is why I want you to take every opportunity that comes your way, even if it makes things more complicated for us. The second week in LA flew by as Amara and Zoe finished the remaining songs. The final arrangements were everything Sarah had hoped for. Sophisticated but accessible, commercial but authentic. Zoe's album now sounded ready for major label release, with instrumental backing that enhanced rather than overshadowed her songwriting. This has been the best creative collaboration of my career, Zoe told Amara on their final day working together. I hope we get to do this again. Me too, Amara said, meaning it. On her last night in Los Angeles, Sarah Chin took Amara to dinner at an upscale restaurant in Beverly Hills to discuss the staff position offer one final time. I need to be honest, Amara said over dessert. I'm not ready to relocate permanently. But I would be interested in project-based work, flying out for specific collaborations. Sarah considered this. That could work, especially if you were available for our priority artists. The pay per project would be higher, and you'd maintain flexibility for your other work. That sounds perfect, Amara said, feeling like she had found a solution that honored both her career ambitions and her personal priorities. Flying back to her adopted home city the next day, Amara felt like she was carrying the best of both worlds with her. The LA experience had shown her what was possible at the highest levels of the music industry, but it had also confirmed that the life she was building with Jackson was exactly what she wanted. Jackson was waiting for her at the airport, and the moment she saw him, any remaining doubts about her decision disappeared. This was home. This was where she belonged. So, he said as they drove back to the studio, how does it feel to be a rising star in the music industry? It feels good, Amara said honestly. But not as good as coming home to you. The future was full of possibilities now, project work with Atlantic Records, the continued growth of Rodriguez Productions, and the relationship she and Jackson were building together. For the first time since her grandmother's death, Amara felt like her life was moving in exactly the direction it was supposed to go. 6 months after returning from Los Angeles, Amara's life had taken on a rhythm that felt both stable and exciting. She spent 3 weeks each month working at Rodriguez Productions, which had indeed expanded to include a small West Coast operation, and 1 week per month in LA working on projects for Atlantic Records and other labels that had started requesting her services. The arrangement had proved beneficial for everyone involved. Rodriguez Productions was handling higher-profile clients, Atlantic was consistently satisfied with Amara's work, and she was building a reputation as one of the most talented arrangers in the industry. But it was the personal side of her life that brought her the most happiness. She and Jackson had settled into a relationship that blended romance with creative partnership seamlessly. They lived together now, having combined her small apartment above the studio with his larger place a few blocks away. Their morning routine included coffee and collaborative work on client projects. Their evenings often involved exploring the city's music scene together. "I have something to show you," Jackson said one morning as they reviewed the day's schedule. He handed her an envelope with her name written in elegant script. Inside was an invitation that made Amara's heart skip. The Morrison Center for the Arts was hosting their annual gala and concert series, featuring emerging artists in classical and contemporary music. She had been invited to perform as the featured pianist. "The Morrison Center," Amara said softly. "Jackson, this is one of the most prestigious venues in the country. And they specifically requested you," Jackson said with a proud smile. "Apparently your reputation has spread beyond the recording industry." The Morrison Center was indeed prestigious, a beautiful concert hall that had hosted some of the world's greatest musicians. Being invited to perform there was the kind of opportunity that could establish Amara as a serious artist beyond her arrangement and session work. "The performance is in 8 weeks, Jackson continued. "They want you to perform 1 classical piece and 1 original composition. 20-minute set, full orchestra backing if you want it." Amara stared at the invitation, trying to process the magnitude of what was being offered. "I haven't performed solo in front of a live audience in over 2 years. "But you're ready," Jackson said confidently. "More than ready. This is your moment, Amara." The next weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Amara chose Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 for her classical piece, the same composition Jackson had requested that first day he heard her play on the Broken Street piano. For her original work she decided to perform the piece she had written for her grandmother, though she spent considerable time expanding and refining it for orchestra. Jackson took on the role of supportive partner and unofficial manager, handling logistics while Amara focused on rehearsals. The Morrison Center provided access to their practice facilities, including a concert grand piano identical to the one she would perform on. "You're going to be incredible," Jackson said one evening as they left a particularly intensive rehearsal session. "What if I mess up?" Amara asked, voicing the fear that had been growing as the performance date approached. "What if I forget the music or my hands shake or—" "Then you'll handle it with grace and keep playing," Jackson interrupted gently. "Amara, you've performed under much more difficult circumstances. You played beautiful music on a broken piano in the rain while people mocked you. This is going to be easy compared to that." His words reminded her of how far she had come, not just in terms of career success but in personal strength and resilience. The woman who would take the Morrison Center stage was not the same person who had sat desperate and hungry outside Morrison's cafe just over a year ago. 2 weeks before the performance, Amara received an unexpected call from Professor Martinez, her former music education professor at Thornton University. "Amara," he said warmly, "I've been following your career with great interest. Your work with Atlantic Records has been making waves in academic circles. Professor Martinez, it's so good to hear from you. I'm calling because the university would like to offer you something," he continued. "A full scholarship to complete your degree, plus a graduate assistantship that would allow you to teach while finishing your studies. We've been following your professional success and would be honored to help you complete your educational goals." The offer was everything Amara had thought she wanted when she had first received that financial aid letter months ago. But now, with her career flourishing and her relationship with Jackson strong, the prospect of returning to school felt less urgent. "That's an incredibly generous offer," she said. "Can I have some time to consider it?" "Of course. Though I should mention that several of our faculty members are planning to attend your Morrison Center performance. We're all very proud of what you've accomplished." That evening, Amara and Jackson discussed the university offer over dinner at Rosa's Diner, which had become their regular spot for important conversations. "What do you think?" Amara asked after explaining the details. "I think you should do whatever feels right for your long-term goals," Jackson said. "Though I will say that some of the most successful people in the music industry don't have traditional degrees. Your professional experience is worth more than any classroom could teach you at this point. Part of me still wants to teach, Amara admitted. I think about my grandmother's belief in the importance of sharing knowledge, and I feel like maybe I should finish what I started. You are teaching, Jackson pointed out. Every time you mentor a young artist at the studio, every time you help someone discover their musical potential, you're teaching. Maybe just not in a traditional classroom. Rosa appeared at their table with coffee refills and her usual warm smile. You two look serious again. More big decisions. Amara's considering going back to school to finish her degree, Jackson explained. Mija, Rosa said, sitting down in their booth uninvited in the way she had earned the right to do over months of friendship. Can I tell you something? I never finished high school. But I've taught 3 kids to be successful adults, and I've taught dozens of young people how to work hard and treat customers well. School is one way to learn, but it's not the only way. But I made a commitment, Amara said. To my grandmother, to myself. Your commitment was to use your gifts to make the world better, Rosa replied. From what I can see, you're doing exactly that. The conversation continued long after Rosa returned to work, with Jackson and Amara exploring all the implications of the university offer. By the end of the evening, Amara had decided to defer the decision until after the Morrison Center performance, wanting to see how that experience influenced her perspective on her future. The final week before the performance was intense but exhilarating. Amara rehearsed with the Morrison Center Orchestra, working with musicians whose skill level challenged and inspired her. The conductor, Maria Santos, was a renowned musician who treated Amara with the respect reserved for established artists. Your original composition is extraordinary, Maria told her after their final full rehearsal. It tells a complete emotional story in just 12 minutes. That's the mark of a gifted composer. The night before the performance, Jackson surprised Amara with a quiet dinner at home, candles on the table and her favorite pasta dish perfectly prepared. How are you feeling? He asked as they ate. Nervous, Amara admitted, but also excited. This feels like everything I've been working toward, the culmination of this incredible journey that started with you listening to me play a broken piano. Tomorrow night, you're going to remind everyone why music matters, Jackson said. You're going to tell your grandmother's story, your story, through music that comes directly from your heart. Will you be there? Amara asked, though she already knew the answer. I wouldn't miss it for anything, Jackson said. Front row, center seat. I want to see every moment of your triumph. That night, as Amara lay in bed trying to calm her pre-performance nerves, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From homelessness and desperation to performing at one of the country's most prestigious venues. From broken dreams to a life filled with love, success, and purpose. Tomorrow would be her moment to shine, to prove to herself and the world that she had not just survived her darkest period but had emerged from it stronger and more talented than ever. But tonight, she was simply grateful for the love and support that had made tomorrow possible. The Morrison Center was sold out, nearly 2,000 seats filled with music lovers, industry professionals, and members of the press. Backstage, Amara paced in her dressing room, wearing the elegant black dress Jackson had helped her choose and trying to calm her racing heart. 5 minutes, Miss Collins, a stagehand called through her door. She looked at herself in the mirror one final time. The woman staring back was confident, professional, ready. No trace remained of the desperate person who had begged for food money on a street corner just 14 months ago. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. Break a leg, beautiful. I love you and I'm so proud of you. Another text followed immediately from Melanie. The whole studio team is here cheering you on. And then, unexpectedly, a text from Sarah Chen at Atlantic Records. Watching the live stream from LA. You're going to be amazing. Taking a deep breath, Amara walked toward the stage, carrying with her the love and support of everyone who had believed in her journey. The Morrison Center stage was magnificent, the concert grand piano positioned perfectly under warm spotlights. As Amara walked across the stage, the audience's applause was warm and welcoming. She found Jackson's face in the front row, his expression glowing with pride and love. Good evening, she said to the audience, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's excellent acoustics. Tonight I'll be performing 2 pieces that represent different aspects of my musical journey. First, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, and then an original composition dedicated to my grandmother, who taught me that music is the language of the heart. The Rachmaninoff was flawless. Every note rang true, every passage flowed with the technical precision and emotional depth that made her reputation. The orchestra followed her lead perfectly, and the audience was completely absorbed in the music. When the final notes faded, The applause was immediate and sustained. But it was her original composition that truly moved the audience. The piece began softly, a simple melody that spoke of love and loss, of dreams deferred and hope rediscovered. As the orchestra joined in, the music built into something powerful and triumphant, telling the story of resilience and second chances without needing words. In the audience, Jackson wiped tears from his eyes as he listened to Amara pour her heart into the music. This was the woman he had fallen in love with, not just for her talent but for her strength, her kindness, her ability to transform pain into beauty. When the last note of her original composition faded into silence, the Morrison Center erupted. The audience rose to their feet as one, applauding with an enthusiasm that spoke to the deep emotional connection Amara had created through her music. She stood at the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response, searching the crowd until she found Jackson's face again. He was applauding proudly, mouthing, "I love you," across the distance between them. "Thank you," Amara said into the microphone as the applause finally began to quiet. "Music saved my life, and tonight you've reminded me why I'll never stop believing in its power to heal and transform." Backstage after the performance, Amara was surrounded by well-wishers, fellow musicians, industry executives, critics, and friends. Professor Martinez appeared with several of her former classmates, all congratulating her on the extraordinary performance. "That original composition needs to be recorded," said David Kim, a classical music critic for the city's largest newspaper. "It's some of the most emotionally powerful music I've heard in years." Sarah Chin appeared via video call on someone's phone, practically glowing with excitement. "Amara, we need to talk. There are 3 major film composers who want to work with you after seeing tonight's performance." But it was Jackson's embrace when the crowd finally dispersed that meant the most to her. "You were incredible," he whispered in her ear. "Absolutely perfect." "We did it," she whispered back. "We actually did it." 1 week later, Amara and Jackson stood outside Morrison's cafe, looking at the spot where the broken piano had been. The instrument was long gone, replaced by outdoor seating for the cafe, but they both remembered exactly where it had sat. "Hard to believe it all started here," Amara said, taking Jackson's hand. "Not all of it," Jackson corrected gently. "Your talent started long before this. Your resilience, your strength, all of that was already part of who you are. This place was just where our paths crossed. They were here for a special purpose." The Morrison Center performance had led to a recording contract for Amara's original compositions, as well as offers for film scoring work and a potential collaboration with the local symphony orchestra. But more importantly, it had inspired an idea. "Are you sure about this?" Jackson asked as they waited for the local news crew to arrive. "I'm sure," Amara said firmly. "It's the right thing to do." The news crew was there to cover the announcement of the Collins Foundation for Music Education, a non-profit organization Amara was establishing to provide music lessons and instruments for children from low-income families. The foundation would be funded by her recording royalties and performance fees, with additional support from Rodriguez Productions and several of their industry contacts. "Music education shouldn't be a luxury," Amara explained to the reporter as cameras rolled. "Every child deserves the chance to discover whether music might be their gift, their passion, their way of expressing what they can't say in words." The reporter asked about her inspiration for the foundation. Amara's eyes found Jackson's as she answered. "I know what it's like to lose everything," she said simply. "And I know how powerful it can be when someone believes in you and gives you a chance to rebuild. This foundation is my way of passing that gift forward." After the news crew left, Jackson and Amara walked to their favorite bench in the nearby park, the same one where they had shared their first serious conversation about the future months ago. "I have something for you," Jackson said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Amara's heart skipped as she recognized what was happening. "Amara Collins," Jackson said, dropping to one knee, "you are the most talented, strongest, most beautiful person I know. You've taught me what it means to be truly partners in both love and life. Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect. Elegant but not flashy, sophisticated but warm, exactly like the relationship they had built together. "Yes," Amara said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." As Jackson slipped the ring onto her finger, Amara thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that desperate day playing a broken piano for food money to this perfect moment planning their future together. "I love you," she said, kissing him softly. "I love you too," Jackson replied. "My guardian angel in ordinary clothes." 6 months later, Amara stood in the same spot outside Morrison's cafe, but this time she wasn't playing for survival. A small stage had been set up for the Collins Foundation's first annual Street Music Festival, an event designed to showcase local talent while raising money for music education programs. She wore her engagement ring and a smile that seemed to light up the entire street as she introduced the afternoon's performers. Jackson stood nearby, now her fiancé and business partner in both the studio and the foundation. Music has the power to change lives, Amara told the crowd that had gathered for the festival. Not just for those who perform it, but for those who hear it, support it, and believe in its ability to bring us together. As the first performer took the stage, a young girl about the age Amara had been when she started taking piano lessons, Amara reflected on how completely her life had transformed. She had gone from hopelessness to hope, from isolation to love, from survival to service. The little girl on stage began playing a simple but beautiful piece on the keyboard the foundation had provided. Her technique was basic, but her passion was evident in every note. "She reminds me of someone I know," Jackson said quietly, moving to stand beside Amara. "She reminds me of someone I used to be," Amara replied, watching the young performer with pride and recognition. The circle was complete. From receiving help to giving it, from desperation to inspiration, from broken dreams to dreams fulfilled beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. As the music filled the street where her new life had begun, Amara knew that her grandmother would be proud of the woman she had become and the way she was honoring the gifts she had been given. The future stretched ahead, bright with possibilities and built on the foundation of love, music, and the simple truth that sometimes guardian angels really do appear when you need them most, ready to remind you that no dream is ever truly lost, only waiting for the right moment to be reborn. Isn't it amazing how one moment of genuine kindness can change the entire trajectory of a person's life? Stories like Amara's remind us that we all have the power to be someone's guardian angel. Have you ever experienced or witnessed a moment when someone's kindness completely transformed a difficult situation? Share your thoughts and subscribe for more inspiring stories about the power of human connection and second chances.